Hello, everyone. This is your friend Dave Gadhvi once again. Welcome to one more episode, one more podcast of Care Nation. We are the family who really cares for our future and we care for others as well. Okay. I have an honor today to have one of amazing personality today who has joined us from all the way from the US, seven seas across, and that person is amazing. She is a speaker, she is a motivational enthusiast, expert. She has written 9 books, and I can just go on and on, but I would let her talk more about her. Let me welcome Ria Story with us. Ria, thank you for joining us today.
Absolutely, David. Thank you. It's my pleasure to be here and join you. I'm so excited.
So are we, and there are other people who are just waiting. It's about 12:30 a.m. in India, and everybody is waiting to hear you. I've created little suspense with the people who are still trying to figure out. I wrote the title of this video itself is "What is Ria's story and why should we
Ah,
care?" So everybody's excited, waiting to hear back from you, Ria. So why don't you help everybody? Give a detailed introduction about who Ria is, and I am very interested in learning and knowing more about your struggle through initial period. How, what was it like? What helped you through? And we will just talk about more about your life and what is it that others can do to overcome the failures or the roadblocks. So why don't you tell us more about who Ria is really?
sure. So today I'm a full-time motivational speaker and author, and both my husband and I do that full-time. In fact, most of the time we speak together. We've even gotten a book written together, and we really enjoy that. Um, I started motivational speaking in 2013. I was sitting in a conference room of hundreds of people, and I heard Les Brown speak. And Les Brown is a very popular motivational speaker here in the
Oh, I love
US.
Les Brown. I love Les Brown.
He's phenomenal. And so he's speaking to this whole room full of people, and he said, "You have a story to tell, and someone needs to hear your story, and only you can help that person." And I thought, well, wow, I've got a story to tell, but I don't want to tell it. And I spent the next 6 months just struggling with that feeling of I should tell my story. But I didn't want to tell my story. I wasn't sure that I could. I had spent 13 years trying to pretend that the first 19 years of my life never happened. And I'd shut it up in a prison wall inside my heart and threw away the key. And I was very successful working in the corporate world. I had gone to school and had a good career. I was very happy doing what I was doing. But sometimes for me, it's the difference between having a career and following a calling. And I realized that if I could just help one person by sharing my story, it would be worth doing so. So 6 months after hearing Les Brown speak for the first time, I went back to a Les Brown speaker training. And part of the speaker training was that everyone in the room would get a chance to speak for 1 minute and 1 minute only, 60 seconds. Because Les Brown says the best speakers make the fewest words go the farthest.
Mhm.
So everyone was going to be given a chance to speak for 1 minute. And I'd been wrestling with this decision and wrestling with it. And I didn't tell anybody I was even thinking about telling my story because I wasn't sure that I could. So the morning of the contest came and I literally just had a meltdown in the ladies' room. Like I was just like, I can't do this. I can't do this. And I really just felt the sense of calm and release when I really just realized that it's not about me, it's about helping someone else. And so I realized I could do it, but I didn't have to do it alone. So I went back into that room and I gave my 1 minute speech from the stage. And it didn't matter when I sat down if I'd won the contest or not, because I'd won a much bigger victory in myself in saying, I'm not going to be ashamed of my past any longer. And in saying that, I proved it. Now, I did win, as it turns out. I was one of the 5 winners chosen to speak on stage with Les Brown a few months later.
Wow.
So that was phenomenal. And 10 days after doing that, I resigned that corporate job I'd worked so hard to get and gone to school for so long. But, it really was the difference between leaving a successful career and following a calling and helping people. And I couldn't do both. So, my story was one of, unfortunately, it's not that uncommon. Um, I was sexually abused from age 12 to 19 by my father. And I left home at 19. I didn't have a job. I didn't have a car. I didn't have any money. I'd never been to school, so I didn't have a high school diploma or a GED. And, I left behind the father who abused me. I left behind the mother who blamed me for it. And I left home with a few bags of clothes and not much else, just a whole lot of hope for the future.
Okay.
But, it doesn't matter what happens to us in life. We can take what life hands us and be bitter about it or better because of it. I spent 7 years just trying to learn how to survive. And even after I left home, I learned to cope, I learned to be successful, but that's not thriving. That's not living life. It's only, I think, when we're able to acknowledge the scars of the past that we can let them truly heal. And
Yeah.
that was huge for me. I learned to cope, I learned to survive. But it's only when I look back and say, yes, that's painful, but that's the first step in healing and overcoming. So, in those years, I was forced to play the role of a wife. I was almost essentially trafficked. I was tied up. I was photographed. I was beaten. Just a lot of years of just trying to really learn to survive in my head, And that's, I think, when I learned what Viktor Frankl says, that everything can be taken from us, but the one thing is the ability to choose our attitude in any given set of circumstances. And that's powerful because it means that whatever's happening to us, we absolutely have the decision to look at it and be positive about it or be negative about it. And we'll absolutely find whatever we're looking for in any situation.
Wow. That's unbelievable. The smiling face that I see right now, it's very.
Well, I'm very, I'm just so fortunate to be where I am today. Um, so much of my healing has come through just, I wrote a couple of books on my story, and I really wanted that to do that to help other people. But it was amazing seeing how the turning a bad situation into something good and something positive really not just helped me heal, but it's really made a difference in other people. And that's been profound, because every time I speak or every time I connect with someone and I share some of my story, I can help them see that, their story may not be my story, but each one of us has faced adversity in life. We all have a story. It's just, who do we become because of it? And if I I think the world needs more hope, and I'm on a mission to just spread it, because each one of us suffers something, but what do we do about it is the real question that defines us.
Yeah, that's the bottom line actually, and you're absolutely right. And the stories that is whether it's good or bad or whatever it is, and I think once you start sharing it, you'll realize that so many people you're connecting with who have gone through exactly what you have gone through, and I can bet
Mm-hmm.
what you've gone through, you're not alone. There are millions and millions of boys and girls when they're small, they go through the same kind of experience, and there are very few people who have the courage to come out of that and speak their story to empower others. So I first of
Mm.
all salute from Care Nation for the bravery and the heart that you have, the positive demeanor that you have managed in you sharing your story with everybody.
Well, thank you. I'm, again, when I can help someone else, that gives us a reason for it. And that's really what it's about for me. I think one thing that I've learned is that when we are ashamed of something or we want to cover something up, we almost give that more power. And so I think resilience, the first step, well, I use an acronym called RISE, so I'll share it with you. The R stands for respond proactively. And what that means is when we respond proactively, we respond to whatever it is based on our values. Stephen Covey talks about it in the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, that between any stimulus, we can pause and choose our response. So responding proactively based on what we truly value, what do we really want? That's the first step. And then the second step is identify accurately what's holding us back. taking a look around and seeing what's the roadblock or what's the step forward that we need to take. And then the third one is the step forward consistently. And this is where we see, just even if we just take one small step forward today, it doesn't have to be a giant leap. But if we can just take a little step forward every single day and move forward, we'll find that compounds over time. And then the E is experience abundantly, because I think so many of us live life, but we forget to live life, because abundance is something that comes from within us. It's tuning into that sense of joy and gratitude that comes from within. It doesn't matter what we have or don't have. I love Nick Vujicic. If you're not familiar with him, you've got to look him up on Google or YouTube.
Okay.
He was born. He's probably about 35 maybe, and he was from Australia. He lives in California now, but he was born with. Yeah, you know him. Okay. No arms and no legs. And on his website, he says, "I'm thankful to have been born this way."
Yeah.
Now, how many of us can practice gratitude when things are going right? But how many of us can truly say, "I'm thankful for the trials in my life"? But when we look at it from a perspective of they make us stronger, or they refine us. I tell people it doesn't have to define, what we go through doesn't define us, but it can refine us. It shapes us. And how it shapes us is our decision. So I think that's important too. It's learning to say I can be grateful for that, because it's helped create the person I am today. Now, that's not always easy to do. And everyone's journey, I think, looks a little different in healing and moving forward. But those 4 steps, I think, have been they're principles. So they're very powerful in just helping anyone overcome something. It's, who is it that said, oh, it's Dr. Edith Ava Agor. She said, "Time doesn't heal all wounds. It's what do we do with the time that heals wounds."
Wow, that's very powerful.
It is, because, we hear so much that time heals everything, and that's not true. It's certainly possible to go through time and not heal. So many of us hold on to bitterness or anger or resentment towards someone, and rather than extending forgiveness. And that's been a big part of my journey. I realized early on that letting go of bitterness would only help me. It's not about the other person. It's about extending forgiveness, because that's changing our mindset, changing our attitude. There's a quote, and I can't remember who said it. It said, "Not extending forgiveness is like drinking poison and expecting the other person to get sick." Because really, if we're holding on to that bitterness, we're the ones feeling the pain and feeling the damage. It's not about the other person.
Wow. Yeah, you got an amazing thought process, and that's really great.
Well, thank you. I've part of my journey is I love to read, and so I've been very fortunate to benefit from people like Viktor Frankl, or Dr. Ager, and some people who've gone through some much worse things than I have. And I think there isn't a scale on human suffering. It's not that I don't want people to hear my story and go, "Well, gosh, my story is not as bad as that." So, they feel like it's not as impactful. That's not true. There's no scale on human suffering. If you're going through something, or you have gone through it, it's just as impactful in its own way, as anything else. And so there's no hierarchy, because when we're experiencing it, does hurt. It does, it is tough, but we absolutely can learn to overcome and get back up again.
Yeah, no, you're right, and I can relate to that thing which you said, that it doesn't have to be as bad as other story. Your story can be an inspirational one. So, like I shared my story probably about 7 to 8 months ago, and I got really good response. So, just to give you a little background, I'm born in a very average middle class family. My dad was a truck driver, and there's nobody in the family who got education. Forget about getting education in English medium, right? They do not even go to the school. And me and my brother, we're the only lucky two. So I shared my story on how I've seen the struggle in terms of, mom and dad had to borrow money, sell their house to, just make sure that we get good education. And me coming from that background, I always valued the money part, right? I always knew the worth, the value of hard work and the money part. But guess what? For 13 years working in corporate, I was still living with the average mindset. And that mindset is something which is crippling 90% of the people living in average middle class families. And that's the messaging that I said, hey, that is something which really enlightened me. And I want to share my story with the world. And ever since I shared that story, again, I had a good life. I cannot complain. Only part is I still remember that I saw my dad struggling, and putting money in the account and paying for the fees and all, driving truck late night with the high beams when it hit the eyes late night. So I saw all that, but I was still happy, but that
Mm-hmm.
happiness, the mediocrity, the thought process actually made me lose what I could have achieved in last 13 years. I could have probably done 100 times better. So I said, hey, it's my job now to share my story. So I even started writing a book. And interesting part is Nick Jojovic. I've even mentioned his story snippet in my upcoming book, which is 80% mindset, 20% skills. So it's very interesting. It's a very small word, same similar thought process. So I absolutely agree with you.
Oh, that's exciting. You know, oh, am I getting some feedback there? We we can always be grateful for where we're at, but we should never be satisfied to stay there. And when we have that growth mindset, we're looking forward. We're grateful for what we have, but always striving to become more, because none of us have reached our potential. None of us have achieved all that we can or are capable of. So grateful, but always striving. And when we're continually improving, the thing about it is what we think about determines our results in life, because our thoughts determine our feelings determine our actions, and our actions determine our results. So, and it's like after I left home, I didn't have a high school diploma or anything, and so the only job I could get was working as a waitress at a pizza restaurant. And I tell this story here in the U.S. to high schoolers, and I'm like, "How much money do you think I was making?" And they're like, "Oh, $10 an hour." I'm like, "No, I was making $2 an hour
Wow.
to pick up pizza crusts off the floor and bus tables." And now there's nothing wrong with that. It was good work, honest work, and I was glad to get it. But it didn't take long to figure out that I didn't want to do that the rest of my life. But my dream job just wasn't going to come and hit me over the head, right? I had to do something different if I wanted to go somewhere different. And so I started going to school. I had to go get my GED first, and then I had to go to school at night. I worked 2 jobs over the next few years. I worked 7 days a week, and I went to school at night or on the weekends. And it took me almost 10 years to graduate with my MBA. But there again, we overestimate what we can accomplish in a short time period, but we underestimate the value of just consistently moving forward. So I think it's important to think about what we think about. Be intentional about our thoughts. I see so many people who are like, "Oh, I don't get on Facebook. It's too negative." I'm like, "Well, quit following negative people. It won't be negative." But we can be intentional about what influences do we let in our life. What are we reading? What are we watching? What are we looking at on TV? Because Jim Rohn says we become the average of the 5 people that we spend the most time with. And so when you think about that, it really means that whatever we're choosing to influence us is going to determine what thoughts we think, how we feel, and what we ultimately end up doing. So if we want to be somewhere different, we have to start thinking different. And I love the mindset concept, because that's so true. It starts with our mindset, and probably ends there as well, in all truth.
Yeah, no, absolutely, absolutely. So I think I'm really excited. I'm really enjoying this conversation. And all the things that you just talking about is just music to my ears.
We're talking the same language.
Yes, indeed, indeed. So tell us a little more about your story. So you went from from a tough childhood to,
Hmm.
working in restaurants. You completed your your degree, college degree. It took 10 years. So what did you do after pizza place? Where did you go, and how did you end up to that seminar of Les Brown?
Sure. So, yeah, after I started working at the pizza place, working toward getting my GED and going to school at a community college, I started looking for a different job once I had some experience and a degree, a high school GED degree. And just little baby steps. I was able to get at least an office type job after a few months, and start getting some experience there, and just continuing to look for opportunities, but being intentional about that. And sometimes it meant driving around town and dropping off resumes to different businesses, because I thought, well, gosh, I'd like to work there maybe. But it took several years. I started working at a doctor's office, and that really started my healthcare administrative career. I've done everything from working at the front desk to the cast technician to managing the office, and I just kept working my way up. And then I moved to a hospital, a large hospital system, and I kind of started at the bottom of the rung in that organization. But again, just continuing to grow, and you know when we talk about working in the corporate world or working for someone else, one of the key concepts in increasing our influence, because leadership is influence, right? We all want to influence others. You think of any time in your life when you are mad or sad or upset, it's because we don't have enough influence, whether it's influence with the boss or influence with your 15-year-old child. So when I figured that out, it was learning to increase my influence. And I was always that person that thought, I'm not a natural leader, I'm not the boss of anybody, so I don't need to read leadership. But if leadership is influence, we all need it, and we all can get it, because it's a skill that we all can learn. And I'm living proof, because I was not that naturally gifted leader. So when I figured that out, things started to change, because then I could be more intentional. I started reading leadership books in 2008. Had just started working at the hospital, but I knew I wanted to grow. I knew I wanted to continue to grow in my career and grow in my influence. So I started reading some leadership books, continued going to school. I didn't finish graduating school until 2012. And that was the year my husband was working as a consultant already. And he went to a conference where he learned about John Maxwell, who's a leadership guru and has written a bunch of leadership books. And then the following February, I went with him, and we went to the Les Brown conference as part of a leadership training. And I was, as I mentioned earlier, I was so happy in my job. I had a great job with a good organization. And I was like, I don't need that leadership stuff. And he was like, just come. It will help you in your career, even if you don't want to come, do a consulting or coaching or anything like that. So I'm like, okay, I'll go. But really, it did change my life, because it opened my eyes to the reality that leadership is influence. I could learn it. I could get better at it. I'd kind of been reading a little bit along, but now suddenly I had a whole toolbox of tools at my disposal. So that's when that's one of the things I talk about in my book, Leadership Gems. It's the things I wish I had known early in my career. Just little nuggets of wisdom. I call them gems, that are just simple foundational principles, but boy, I wish I had known them. So one of those, and this one's not in the book, but it's just tried and true if you think about it. If you're working in an organization, or no, let's flip it around. Say you're the boss and you have two people who report to you. And one person is always coming to you going, gosh, would you give me a raise? Gosh, would you give me a raise? But the other person is always coming going, hey, I could take some more responsibility, or give me some more things to do, or give me more work, give me more responsibility. So which person would you want to give the raise to?
Yeah.
You want to give it to the one with the responsibility, right?
Yes. Yes.
So we don't always think about it, but Mac and I love to teach this concept to even high schoolers. and say, as you move forward in your career, the way to increase your influence with the boss is always growing yourself. Ask for more responsibility, ask for those opportunities, because you'll become recognized as someone who has leadership potential. And that's huge. It opens doors. You're increasing your influence. Leadership is so complex and so incredibly simple at the same time because it involves people. You know, the principles apply anywhere. The practices look different, you know, what we do in each situation, but the key fundamental principles apply universally. And that's why they're so powerful, because it's kind of like gravity. You know, it applies to all of us, whether we like it or not, whether we admit it or not. We have to deal with it.
Yeah.
Leadership is the same way. So it's learning the language of influence.
Now that's so beautifully said. And I remember, a lot of people reaching out to me asking for help. And I said, hey, the best way to get help is to give help and give value, right? And
Yes.
in a care nation, or me as a person, I always am game to helping other people. But it's my job to even tell them that, hey, it's just not the only way to get something done. Like, a lot of freshers reach out to me and say, hey, Dave, can you help me find a job? Can you pass my resume? I said, I would love to. Let me ask you this. What is it that you're willing to do for me?
Mm-hmm.
That's a simple question. Again, not that I want anything, but if you're not able to figure out how you can add value to me, you already failed the interview. You know, so I said, then I did made a video out of it, and I did a live stream on that, and I got a lot of good
Mm-hmm.
response on that. So I completely agree that, in order to become a leader, you don't need to do a substantially, big things. You don't need to, move the mountains. These small bits, just following somebody and say, hey, I loved your post. I'm going to share it. I'm going to talk about you. I'm going to read your book. That itself means a lot to the person. And you say, hey, tell me, what do you want? What can I do for you? Right? You can
Yes.
post and all these little things which actually differentiates you from being a taker and being a
Mm-hmm.
giver. And when you're a giver, that itself is a different dynamics altogether. And I think you might have already read Tony Robbins and all the different books, where he talks about, being a giver and give more to get whatever you want in life.
That's so true, Dave. We if we focus on adding value to others, the rest will take care of itself. And I see so many people who have a scarcity mindset, like there's not enough to go around, so I'm going to hoard whatever it is, knowledge, information, resources. But I mean, it's kind of like the air we breathe. There's plenty of it for everybody. And when we give away, we find that we receive much more. Um, you're hitting it right on the nail on the head, because it's a powerful concept. We have to focus on becoming more valuable in ourselves, growing and developing ourselves intentionally, and then then we have something to add value to others. So we cannot give what we don't have. So we have to be intentional about growing ourselves so that we can add. And that's one of the reasons I read. I read one nonfiction book. I read 50 books a year. So I try to average about one per week, because
Wow.
there's so much out there that I don't know, and I know I don't know it. But if I can grow me and become more valuable, I can help more people. And I love the concept of being a river. Whatever we receive, if we let that flow through us, the river is always fed. It's always fresh. Otherwise, it's a reservoir that just kind of holds everything in and becomes stagnant. And none of us want to be like that. That's not life. So if we focus on being the river, let things pass through us. At the end of the day, we can't take anything with us anyway. So
Yeah, I like that. I like that. The liver concept is really good. I like the flow. And
yeah.
an interesting point that you made, you read 50 books. I think a lot of my viewers who have been following me, they know it. I talk about, reading books a lot, because an average millionaire or a CEO, you know it already, that they read about 60 books in a year,
Oh,
right?
I'm 10 down. I need to pick it up.
Right. So I made my goal that, hey, what is it that I can do? How can I beat a millionaire or a CEO? Maybe I
Yeah.
don't have $1 million right now, but I have enough time. I can beat them on their daily habits. And if I can acquire their habits, Trust me, I can visualize myself, becoming rich from all the ways, not just money, from health, from from family aspect, from knowledge, from care, and then of course money as well. So I've given myself a target of at least reading or listening to. I'm more of an audio guy, not
Mhm.
more of a reader. So I have given myself a target of listening to at least 100 audiobooks in a year, and I'm
That's phenomenal.
yeah, I'm probably doing good in last few months. I think I've done about, on an average, 6 or 7 books in a month. So
Hmm.
I'm trying to increase more.
That's phenomenal. That's one of the best ways we can learn and grow because we have access to so much knowledge through reading or listening to audiobooks. There most of the people whose books I read, I will never get an opportunity to meet, but we have the ability to learn from their lessons and their mistakes and their wisdom. Now it's kind of like Mac uses the analogy, so I'll share it with you because I think it's appropriate. So much of the time we're you by the time you've read that many books, there's nothing very new or shocking. It's all just the same principles in a different way to say it. And yet so much of the time it's like digging for gold. A lot of times when you're digging for gold, you're just hunting the nuggets of wisdom. Now, you might get some dirt, but you're hunting those nuggets, and those nuggets are what make it worth reading, what makes it worth doing. And so the more you read and the more you grow, the more you realize there's so much more out there to learn, and we'll never possibly learn it all. But that's why I encourage people reading leadership books. Read the other things that you're interested in, absolutely, but also read leadership books because leadership is the language um, of influencing and being successful. And those are the key skills that will help you be successful personally and professionally.
Yeah.
So many people think of leadership as something for the work, but gosh, I want to influence the people at home personally because those are the people we love and care about.
Yes.
Setting a good example for our children and being able to influence them or our spouse. So those principles are universal and they do absolutely apply personally and professionally.
Yeah. No, I agree.
So in 2013, after I resigned my job in the corporate world, it took me almost a year to write my first book. Um, and and I thought I was done. I was like, okay, now I can check that box and move on. Like, I'm done with that. I'm done with life. But I realized there was so much more to say about healing and recovering. And, I write books because people, who may read the book that I may never get to speak to, or they may never hear me speak, but they may read the book. So my next book was Beyond Bound and Broken, and I really talk about the healing journey, the resilience journey in that book. And last year was a book writing season, so I wrote several books last year. Um, five books last year. So,
Wow. That is amazing.
well, once I started talking, I couldn't stop, apparently. And I'm working on one right now. I've been invited to give a TEDx talk in November, so that's coming up soon. So I'm really excited about that and on resilience.
That's
So
fantastic.
yeah, so that's been a blessing, and working on a book to accompany that. So um, it's been certainly a journey. I went full time as a speaker in 2014. So a few months after I resigned my job, I worked at Good Notice, and since then I haven't looked back because I wake up each day and it's a gift of being able to help someone. And it's we don't always know the impact that we make in people's lives. And I tell people, I'm like, you don't have to change the whole world. You can just focus on improving your corner of it right now. And it starts with each one of us. It starts with improving ourselves. Um, we so often we think that, well, gosh, I'm nobody special or I'm not going to make a difference. But really, we can absolutely make a little difference right here. And if each person on the planet were just a little bit better every single day, think how different the world could be.
Wow, that's a beautiful, beautiful thought, and that's so powerful. I think that could be one of the biggest takeaway from this discussion, that everybody has power to change little. You don't have to again shake mountains, but you can change little. imagine the amount of happiness, or the happiness that you get when somebody comes and tells you that, hey, Ria, I am who I am because of you. You know, you changed my life because of your talk, because of your book. Kind of fulfillment that you will feel, the kind of dopamine, as science says, the dopamine punch that you'll get in your head is like very addictive. And I felt that, you know, when I started my journey, and I'm pretty new to this as well. I just started a couple of years back. My transformation, my mindset changed after I read the 10x rule from Grant
Hmm.
Cardone. And
Hmm.
ever since then, I've read multiple books, and I've started my journey on helping and making difference to one person at a time. And then I've, you know, probably now got thousands of followers now. My goal is to inspire and empower 10 million people. So imagine if that, the mindset that you have and the mindset which I am acquiring, if that mindset is acquired by 10 million people, can you imagine what the effect would be around the world? Everybody would be unstoppable.
You're absolutely right. And I mean, that kind of vision is exciting. It's inspiring because we don't have to wait on anybody else to start. You can start today. You can start right now, you know. And again, it just comes back to realizing that as individuals, we have the ability, but we have the also have the responsibility. Because to whom much is given, much is required.
Oh yeah, I completely agree. You know, it is our duty to, you know, give back to the world whatever you have. And I read this somewhere, and I even quoted that giving is living.
Hmm,
That
that's
is
true.
that is something which I live by, and you know that's where the Care Nation community is built. That we need to care and we need to give more, and whatever you give. And there's one more saying which I don't know. I've not read anybody saying that. A lot of people say give to get, but I say give and forget.
Hmm. When you're
So
able to give with no expectation of something in return, that's truly giving. You know, that's giving without thinking that that we deserve something. Yeah, I agree with that. I think that's true. That's when we come into alignment with our purpose, really, when we're in alignment with that purpose and we're in harmony with that. That's where I think we find fulfillment in what we're doing. Because, you know, joy comes from within, but we do need to be in harmony. You know, we do need to be fulfilling that purpose. And that looks like a little bit something different for every one of us, but only we can be the ones to say I am living into my purpose and working towards my potential. It's a journey. I think we never get there.
yeah, for sure, for sure. Beautiful. So I was just a little curious. So
Sure.
out of the 9 books that you've written, what genre is it? Like, is it all leadership, or if you can just help me understand that?
Sure. So I have two autobiographies, if you will. Ria's Story, From Ashes to Beauty, and Beyond Bound and Broken, where I really talk about my personal story. Um, and then I have a couple of leadership books, Leadership Gems for Women and Leadership Gems, very almost identical books, but one is for specifically for women. So those are leadership. And then I have a couple of books. There maybe you could call them in leadership books, but one's on communication because I was so bad at communicating and connecting with people for so long that when I figured out I could get better, I wanted to help other people do it. So I have a book on communication and connection called Straight Talk. And then Mac and I co-wrote a book on leading yourself and others through change. It's called Change Happens. And then I have a book on, it's not really time management, but it's managing our life and our activities and our energy around time. Because again, that's just something that I'm very passionate about because especially as, you know, when we get working and busy and we have a family, there's so many things going on. And you've probably heard the analogy of someone juggling crystal balls. And you know, the ones that we drop, they may shatter and we can't pick them back up. So I went through a season where I tried to take on the world, and you know, that might get you somewhere short term, but it's not a long term strategy for wellness. And so I realized that was important to me. And then I have a gratitude, like a women's journal, just on practicing daily gratitude. Um, I hope I will write more books in that series as we go, but it hasn't been high on the priority list yet. So, but I think that if I could get 1 or 2 a year, that's probably a good goal. Considering the other things that I'm doing and traveling and speaking, I'd rather focus on quality at this point and making sure that I'm putting the right thoughts into them.
Sure, absolutely. So if somebody has to pick up, let's say 2 books of yours, which one would you recommend them, top 2? I mean, it's
I would
for a mother to choose from the babies.
I would say Beyond Bound and Broken, because that's really about my healing journey. And I think that, I really talk about my story, but I talk about the healing journey in itself, for the resilience journey. So I really walk the reader through how to overcome something, and the steps that worked for me. And then Leadership Gems, or Leadership Gems for Women. I know I have one here. Yeah, and I really just talk about the nuggets of wisdom that I wish I had known. Nothing. I write very simple books. They're 3-page chapters, 30 chapters, so it's bite-sized nuggets. Because I think that our culture today tends to be more bite-sized.
Yeah, I agree. Speed. Everybody has limited time. Everybody wants that short, crisp, and simple.
Cliff notes. We do. So I like to just be short and powerful and to the point, and it kind of weeds out some of the extra stuff. So those would be my top 2.
Fantastic. So guys, if you're listening to this, I'm going to make your life easy. I'm going to leave all the links to Ria's book in the description box below. And you can just go to the link and you can just pick up, the book which resonates well with you. Definitely, I will stick to the recommendation from Ria. Now, we have one question from audience. Ankush Dubey, he wants to know that what are the 3 things that you would like to tell the viewers from your journey of life that could lead to a successful and happy life?
Successful and happy life, 3 things. We touched on them a little bit already, but the first one would be proactive. Respond proactively. That really is that realization that regardless of what's going on around me, what's happening to me, whether I'm healthy or well, that none of that determines our happiness. Our joy comes from within. And I think when we realize that, when we truly realize that, that is the critical step in finding joy and success and abundance. Now, it's not an easy thing to do. And trust me, it's so easy to sit here and say, but it's so much harder to do. When you're driving in traffic and you have a car wreck, can you get out and be grateful for that? Can you be grateful when you're sick, or can you be grateful when you go through some hard times? And the answer is yes, but it's not easy. I think of it like a mental muscle, and it's like our physical muscles. The more we use it, the stronger it gets. So I tell people, start small. And, if it may be just, I'm grateful that it's not raining today, start small and practice that. So responding proactively, that's the first thing. The second thing is being intentional and moving forward consistently. Personally and professionally, I would say you should have a growth plan. Mine is reading 50 books a year. Yours is 100. Whatever that looks like. Maybe it's watching 10 TEDx talks, or maybe it's reading LinkedIn articles. Choose what fits for you, but make sure you're doing a little bit every day. John Maxwell uses the analogy of chopping a tree down. So if you walk outside your door and you take 5 swings of an axe, and then you put the axe down and you walk away. And tomorrow you get up and you take 5 swings with the axe and you walk away. What happens eventually?
Yeah.
The tree will fall,
Yes.
right? And it's almost no effort. But so often in life, we get up and we hit this tree over here 5 times, and then we go hit that tree over there 5 times, and then we hit that tree over there 5 times. So it's the consistency in chopping that one tree down. So that's number 2. And the third thing I think is, when we talk about identifying where we're going and being consistent in it. And then the third thing is, as we look around, and I talked about it earlier, being grateful but never satisfied. Don't stop. Don't stop. Continue to move forward. Because if we're not moving forward, we're moving backward. The world around us is changing. Eric
Yeah.
Hoffer said, in times of change, learners inherit the earth, while those who have learned find themselves beautifully equipped to deal with a world that no longer exists.
Oh, that's so powerful and so beautiful.
Yeah, it resonates. And so, just doesn't have to be all day, but just move forward a little bit every day.
Excellent, excellent. I think that's a really, really great wisdom shared by you, Ria. And I'm so glad that we had this conversation. At a personal level, I could connect so well with you because I think we are aligned towards similar mindset and similar thought process. So I'm glad that people got to learn more about your life and how you went through that tough situation and how you built your strong mindset to get ahead in life. We all wish you, Care Nation wishes you all the best for all your future journey. We definitely will stay in touch, and I'm gonna share your books and your wisdom with everybody here, whoever I meet. And I'm also gonna pick up some of the books, and I'm gonna learn more about your life and your wisdom.
Well, thank you. It's just been a pleasure, Dave. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. And if people have to follow you on, let's say, top two platform, which one do you prefer?
LinkedIn and Facebook.
Great. So guys, I'm going to leave those links in the description box below as well, so you can follow Ria and start picking her amazing brains. Okay. Thank you so much, Ria.
Bye. Thank you. Take care.
Take care. Bye bye, Ria. See ya. So, guys, thank you so much for watching Care Nation. This is your friend Dave Gadhvi. I'm 100% committed to serving you guys for lifelong. My goal is to help 10 million people, to inspire them and empower them. If you want to be part of the Care Nation community, part of the Care Nation WhatsApp group, just leave your number below. And if you have any query, I am there to help you and guide you for whatever you need. Okay, thank you so much for watching. Do share this video with people who will get benefited. Thank you so much and have a fantastic day.